October 7, 2019. Cape Coral, Florida. A city of palm trees and sunshine was about to witness evil wearing a charming smile. Two women, strangled, within hours of each other. One killed in her sleep. The other run over so many times her body was described as looking like spaghetti. But this isn't just another murder story. This is the story of how a tattooed killer became a social media sensation. How thousands of women fell in love with a brutal murderer. How good looks and charisma created what experts call the ultimate modern cult of personality around pure evil. This is the story of Wade Wilson, the man they call the Deadpool killer. And by the end, you'll understand why his case reveals something deeply disturbing about our society. Welcome to the Guilty Guild. I am your host, and here we discuss true crime, cold cases, and unsolved mysteries. If you appreciate this content, please subscribe. Thank you to all of you. Disclaimer: this material is for educational and informational purposes, based on public sources that I have researched and compiled as clearly as possible. It may include sensitive themes, violence, crime, and distress. If you feel this might affect you, please do not continue. I am not a psychologist or a professional journalist, just a storyteller passionate about true crime. I approach every story with respect for victims, families, and everyone affected. The information comes from credible public sources, court documents, news reports, police statements, and public records. I verify every claim twice. However, I'm only human. If you have additional information or notice any inaccuracy, please let me know in the comments so I can correct it. Now let's begin. May 20th, 1994. Somewhere in Florida, a baby boy entered the world under circumstances nobody would wish for. His biological mother was a teenager. His biological father, Stephen Testaseca, was only 14 or 15 years old when he learned he was going to be a father. Two children having a child. The young couple made an impossible decision. They couldn't keep him. They couldn't provide. So at just 3 months old, the baby was given up for adoption. The adoptive parents were Steve and Candace Wilson, a devout Catholic family from Tallahassee. They knew the baby's biological mother's parents from church. When approached about the adoption, they prepared to welcome this child with all their love and warmth. Some reports suggest his name may have been changed after adoption, though publicly available records identify him as Wade Stephen Wilson. In a letter read during his sentencing years later, his adoptive parents would write, "Wade was a joyful child, loved his parents and sisters, and was loved immensely in return. For a while, everything seemed perfect." The Wilsons gave Wade a nice house in the suburbs. They owned greyhounds. They had expensive vehicles. But as one of Wade's former classmates would later say, they weren't just about material things. Their mindset was in the right place, too. But something was broken inside Wade Wilson. Something no amount of love could fix. By age 11, Wade told his adoptive mother something chilling: "Mom, I feel like I'm going crazy." Despite his constant smile, his heart carried deep suffering. During his childhood, Wade sustained multiple head injuries. According to testimony, he suffered at least 4 concussions. Some sources mention injuries from sports, specifically during a baseball game, where he took a strong blow to the head. There were also car accidents where Wade lost consciousness. Dr. Mark Rubino, a neurologist who would later examine Wade, testified that Wade told him he was pretty normal up until 11 years old. Then something changed. The head injuries, combined with whatever psychological issues were already present, created a perfect storm. His adoptive mother, Candy Wilson, noticed his depression. She saw how he withdrew, how he became erratic. But despite all their efforts, despite taking him to counseling and trying to get him help, Wade continued to spiral. Wade attended Deer Lake Middle School and Lawton Childs High School in Tallahassee. Former classmates paint a picture of a troubled teenager sliding into darkness. One anonymous classmate who spoke to Newsweek remembered Wade's friend group vividly. They sat together at lunch in middle school. Nobody would eat. They would just pass drugs around, which was so weird to me, she recalled. In high school, Wade would always wear a black hoodie with a hood over his head. Another friend did the same thing. They always looked so eerie together, the classmate remembered. Just like at 6:30 in the morning, the sun hasn't come up yet. You just see them on the side of a building. And I'm like, oh wait, those are my friends. Despite coming from a loving home with parents who tried everything, Wade was described by everyone who knew him with one consistent word: troubled. His adoptive parents later wrote in their emotional letter, but over the teen years, and then especially in the early years of adulthood, Wade began to slip away from us, becoming withdrawn, erratic, and depressed at first. Then his addiction was added to mental illness, and he became, frankly, paranoid and delusional, and a sense of loss became increasingly sharp. They believed the system failed Wade. They put a tiny band-aid on it, and then sent him back into the world without a diagnosis, medication, and without follow-up care, they wrote. We tried to hold pieces together, but had no idea how to find the support Wade needed to be the person he was inside. Wade presumably graduated from Childs High School in 2012 or 2013. But by then, he was already on a path toward destruction. Wade Wilson's encounters with law enforcement began in 2012 in Leon County. Burglary, assault, firearm-related offenses. The charges piled up quickly. November 2013, Wade was sentenced to prison for burglary and grand theft. He served until September 2014. 2015, a woman accused Wade of sexual battery and kidnapping after she claimed he assaulted her in his vehicle following a party. He was acquitted of these charges by a jury. Some sources note there was a lack of evidence. An existing no-contact order prevented full investigation. 2017, Wade was incarcerated again, this time for stealing firearms. He served until July 2018. 2018, while serving time, Wade was mentioned in connection with a shocking case. Jerry Michael Mike Williams was the target of an alleged murder-for-hire plot by his wife, Denise Williams. Wade claimed he received $20,000 in a white manila envelope at a meetup after his release, while still on probation, to carry out the attack. Whether this was truth or another one of Wade's stories remains unclear, but it shows the circles he was moving in. February 2019, Wade's former girlfriend reported an incident where he allegedly assaulted and choked her. She initially accused him of kidnapping and rape, but investigators didn't pursue these charges due to lack of evidence and an existing no-contact order. July 1, 2019, Wade was arrested again for battery. By October 2019, Wade Wilson had been arrested more than 20 times since 2010. Assault, fraud, trespassing. He was a repeat offender, spiraling out of control. But nobody knew that the worst was yet to come. At 18 years old, Wade reached out to his biological father, Stephen Testaseca. Their contact over the years would be described as sporadic. According to Testaseca's testimony, Wade often asked him for money. Their relationship was distant but maintained enough that Wade felt comfortable calling his father when things went wrong. Testaseca would later say his son was a good storyteller. This detail becomes crucial because on October 7, 2019, when Wade called his father with a confession, Testaseca initially thought it was just another one of Wade's wild stories. He had no idea his son was telling the truth about becoming a killer. In 2018, Wade Wilson met Kelly Matthews on the dating app Plenty of Fish. Kelly was immediately drawn to him. He was tall, 6'4", and had nice teeth and dimples and tattoos, Kelly recalled in interviews. At the time, Wade didn't have the facial tattoos that would later make him infamous. He was handsome, charismatic, smart. They quickly moved in together. Regular dates. Kelly introduced Wade to her family and friends. For months, everything seemed perfect. There were no red flags, no signs of violence. He was never violent, ever, until that night, Kelly would later say. That night was February 18, 2019. Just 8 months before Wade would commit double murder. Kelly and Wade got into an argument. She had taken his book bag to search it for drugs. He kicked a door. She threw a kitchen table at him. But he still didn't hit her. Not yet. Wade agreed to go to rehab nearby, but then changed his mind. He said he wanted to go to a rehab in the Florida Keys instead. Kelly suspected he was lying, that he really wanted to meet someone down there. They argued in a parking lot. I got back in the car, put my seatbelt on, and that is when he started choking me, Kelly testified. He choked me 2 or 3 times. I started to black out. I was freaking out. What happened next was horrific. Wade pushed Kelly onto the floorboard of her own car. He cut off her clothes with a knife. He told her to stay down there. Then he put her in the back of the car and sexually assaulted her. At some point, he bit my face, bit me in the chin, Kelly said, showing photos of her injuries. Her lip was busted. She had ligature marks on her hands where he tied her up with garbage bags from the back of her car. He tied me up with garbage bags that were in the back of my car, cut the circulation off my hands. I literally thought my hands were going to fall off. Wade gagged her. He tied a shirt around her face. He bound her hands and feet. This wasn't a moment of rage. This was calculated torture. Eventually, before they reached the keys, Wade freed Kelly. He handed her the car keys and got into another car with a woman. Kelly drove 100 miles per hour all the way home, hoping to get pulled over by police. She went straight to the hospital with deputies from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. They collected a sexual assault kit. They took over 200 photos of her injuries, showing bruising on her neck, the cut on her lip, the bite marks, the ligature marks. A police officer told Kelly he went to the keys and spoke to Wade about the incident. Wade told the officer that Kelly was into that kind of thing sexually. No arrest was made. The detective's report stated there are no witnesses to the alleged crime and no evidence to establish probable cause. Kelly felt the system had failed her spectacularly. This man drove through a McDonald's while I was tied up in the back of my car, naked, bound, and gagged. Literally, I had a shirt tied around my face. I had leggings in my mouth. My foot was broken because he slammed it in the door. Years later, after Wade was convicted of double murder, Kelly spoke out on TikTok. I think these women would still be alive because I would have testified against him for this. My whole family, all my friends, everyone would have stood up for this. And this detective basically said you were into that kind of thing, so we can't really do anything about it. Kelly Matthews vowed that if Wade Wilson gets the death penalty, she'll be there to watch. They'll be in the front row, she promised. You'll get what you deserve. Assistant State Attorney Sarah Miller would later acknowledge the pattern. We have heard from many women who have been victimized by the defendant, but maybe you didn't go forward on charges or for whatever reason didn't find justice in the justice system. Wade Wilson had a specific pattern with women. Multiple ex-girlfriends would come forward with similar stories of abuse. One testified anonymously during trial. I know a couple girls he has tied up and assaulted and put in a trunk or put in the back of a car. But Kelly Matthews was the closest call before the murders. If police had arrested Wade for what he did to her, Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz might still be alive today. By October 2019, Wade had moved to the Fort Myers area. He was in a relationship with Melissa Montanez, who went by Mila. She owned a spa called Mila Spa. Their relationship was volatile. They argued frequently. Mila would later testify about Wade's dual nature. He has two sides to him, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He absolutely can be the sweetest guy that you've ever met in your whole life, but he's also a monster. On the night of October 6, 2019, Wade and Mila went to Buddha Live, a live music bar at 12701 McGregor Boulevard in Fort Myers. But the couple quarreled while at the bar. The night was about to take a deadly turn. Wade would later tell his father that Mila was supposed to die too. When asked about Mila and killing her, he said there were too many people around, prosecutors revealed during trial. I probably would have killed her too. Mila had no idea how close she came to becoming victim number 3. Kristine Marie Melton was 35 years old. She had been raised in Illinois, but moved to Cape Coral, Florida with her best friend since high school, Stephanie Sailors. They were both servers at the same restaurant. Kristine's neighbors described her as sweet and friendly. She was happy-go-lucky, help anybody, very nice person, neighbor Debbie McCabe said. Kristine was close to her family. She lived just 4 houses down from her mother in Cape Coral so she could keep her safe. Her mother was battling dementia and was vulnerable to scammers. Every morning, Kristine and her mother had coffee together. They were best friends. Kristine's cousin, Samantha Catomer, would later testify that Kristine was quick-witted, the godmother to her child, someone who made everyone feel safe and understood. Kristine will never experience motherhood, a role she was born to play, Samantha said through tears. Kristine was a cat lover. She loved to travel and wanted to get to know the world. She had lived in Colorado before settling in Florida. She was adventurous, full of life, with her whole future ahead of her. On the night of October 6, 2019, Kristine went out with her friend Stephanie Sailors to Buddha Live to listen to live music. It was supposed to be a fun night out. At the bar, Wade Wilson was there with his girlfriend Mila, despite their argument. At some point, Wade befriended a man named Jason Shepard. The group began to mix. Wade and Jason struck up a conversation with Kristine and Stephanie. Wade and Kristine hit it off. They talked. They laughed. There was a connection, or at least that's what Kristine thought. When the bar closed, the group had a decision to make. They all ended up going to Jason Shepard's home. It was the early morning hours of October 7th now. At Shepard's house, Wade and Kristine were intimate. Stephanie Sailors would later testify about the atmosphere that morning. When she last saw Kristine, everything was fine. Critically, she said Kristine would have never let me leave the house if she was scared. Kristine felt safe. She had no reason to fear Wade Wilson. After some time at Shepard's house, Wade, Kristine, and Stephanie left. They all rode in Mila's car to Kristine's Cape Coral home. This would be the last time Stephanie saw her best friend alive. Kristine's duplex in Cape Coral became a crime scene in the early morning hours of October 7, 2019. After Stephanie Sailors left, Kristine went asleep in her own bed. She felt safe in her own home. She had no idea the man she had just met was about to kill her. Wade strangled Kristine as she slept. Dr. Noelia Aylmar Hernandez, an associate medical examiner, testified that Kristine died by asphyxia due to compression of the neck. The autopsy revealed horrific injuries, bruising to her face and body, hemorrhages on her neck, contusions to the lungs, liver, bladder, and colon. Kristine's cat sat by her crumpled body when police arrived. The animal had stayed with her, unable to understand why its owner wouldn't wake up. After killing Kristine, Wade stole her black Nissan Versa and fled. His biological father, Stephen Testaseca, would later testify about what Wade told him during their phone call. Wade admitted he got on top of Kristine and choked her while she slept. When prosecutors asked if Wade showed any remorse, Testaseca said no. Wade told police detectives later, "I would do it again." But Wade wasn't done. Not even close. Wade drove Kristine's stolen black Nissan to Mila Spa on the morning of October 7th. Mila had been dropped off there by her friend Amy Slobodzian because Wade had taken Mila's car the night before when he left the bar. Amy witnessed what happened next. She testified that when Mila went out to meet Wade to get her car back, Wade attacked her in the parking lot. "He said to me, if I get out of the car, he was going to kill me," Amy recalled. "He was just dragging her and beating her." Mila later testified, "There's nobody behind the eyes anymore. There's no reasoning with him." When Mila took the stand at trial, she recounted Wade attacking her. "He beat her violently. Blood went crazy everywhere. I knew I was going to die that day," Mila said. "But there were too many people around. Too many witnesses. Amy was there. Other people could see. Wade couldn't finish what he started. Instead, he left Mila bleeding in the parking lot and drove off in Kristine's stolen car. He was already looking for his next victim. Hours after killing Kristine Melton and assaulting Mila Montanez, Wade Wilson drove through Cape Coral looking for another victim. Diane Ruiz was 43 years old. She was a mother of two sons, Brandon Cuellar, then 28, and Zane Romero, who had just started high school. Diane was engaged to Scott Hannon. She worked as a server and bartender at the Moose Lodge in Cape Coral. Diane's co-workers and customers loved her. She didn't have a bad bone in her body. "She did not deserve to end up over there like that," said Ernie Carroll. On October 7, 2019, Diane was walking to work. It was a Monday morning. The last text she sent was to her fiancé, Scott, "I love you." Wade spotted Diane walking along a Cape Coral street. He pulled over in Kristine's stolen black Nissan. He asked Diane for directions to a nearby school. It seemed innocent, helpful. Diane got into the car to help this stranger find his way. It was the last decision she would ever make. Once Diane Ruiz was in the car, Wade strangled her while he drove. When Diane tried to get out of the vehicle, Wade attacked her. He beat her. He strangled her. But unlike Kristine, Diane didn't die quickly. Wade pushed Diane out of the car. She was still breathing. She was still alive. What Wade did next shows the level of his depravity. He got back in Kristine's car and ran over Diane's body. Again, and again, and again. Multiple times, with reports often describing it as close to 20. Wade called his biological father, Stephen Testaseca, and told him what he'd done. Testaseca testified about that horrifying phone call. According to Testaseca, Wade said Diane was still breathing before he ran her over. Wade described to his father how he kept running over her body. Wade told his father he ran her over multiple times until she looked like spaghetti. Those were Wade's own words. Like spaghetti. Diane's body was found in a field in Cape Coral on October 10, 2019, 4 days after she was reported missing. Vultures were circling overhead. The injuries were catastrophic. The autopsy revealed a nasal bone fracture, a laceration to her left breast, bruising on both sides of her body, multiple rib fractures, and extensive trauma from being run over repeatedly. Diane was only blocks from the Moose Lodge. She had almost made it to work. Her sons would later testify about the impact of her murder. Zane Romero, who was 19 when his mother died, had just made his high school marching band. Diane was so excited to watch his debut. I never got to see her in the crowd, Zane testified. My mom will never get to see me get married. Diane was engaged to be married. She had her whole life ahead of her. Her children needed her. And Wade Wilson took all of that away because, as he would tell police, he just wanted to do it. After murdering 2 women within hours of each other, Wade Wilson called his biological father, Stephen Testaseca, multiple times on October 7, 2019. Testaseca was at work when the calls came in. Wade sounded desperate. He needed help. He had done something he couldn't take back, Testaseca testified. Wade told his father, "There's 2 people gone that would not be back." He said I'm a killer. At first, Testaseca didn't believe him. He just told me, did some. There was 2 people gone. That would not be back, Testaseca recalled. I just told him to call me back. I just thought it was another story. Wade was known as a good storyteller. Testaseca thought his son was making it up, exaggerating, being dramatic. But Wade called back, and this time he provided details. Wade described meeting Kristine at the bar, how they went to her house, how she fell asleep, how he got on top of her and choked her. Then Wade described seeing Diane walking, how he picked her up, how he choked her while driving, how she tried to get out, how he pushed her out of the car and realized she wasn't dead yet. He said to me that he got back in the car and he ran her over multiple times until she looked like spaghetti, Testaseca testified. Wade couldn't explain his motives beyond a chilling simplicity. I just wanted to do it. When asked if Wade showed any remorse during these calls, Testaseca said no. None at all. Testaseca's initial instinct was to help his son. But as Wade kept calling, providing more and more details, Testaseca's perspective changed. I initially wanted to help him, Testaseca said. But then he started thinking, what if that was my mom, or my daughter, sister, or wife? Testaseca realized that if he didn't turn Wade in, his son would kill again. He would have done it again, Testaseca said. During the later phone calls, Testaseca put his phone on speaker. His wife listened in and relayed the information to law enforcement in real time. Testaseca asked Wade for his location, telling him he would send an Uber to pick him up. Wade believed his father was going to help him escape. Instead, Testaseca gave Wade's location to police. On October 8, 2019, U.S. Marshals arrived at an unoccupied residence that Wade had broken into. Testaseca encouraged Wade to exit peacefully. I didn't want him to do anything stupid and get killed, Testaseca remembered. I told him to put his hands up and go outside. Wade surrendered. He was arrested on charges of burglary, larceny, damaged property, and battery for the assault on Mila Montanez. At that moment, police didn't yet have enough evidence to charge him with murder. But they knew. And Wade knew they knew. In body cam footage from that day, a shirtless Wade Wilson appeared surprisingly calm. He had arrived at Mila's spa earlier that day in Kristine's stolen car. One witness, Joshua Lukic, who owned Mateos Graphics on Hancock Bridge Parkway, testified about seeing Wade that morning. He was wearing sweatpants only, no shoes, no shirt, bloody, missing a couple teeth, Lukic recalled. Wade was trying to get a plane ticket or a bus ticket. Whatever he could from me to leave town. Wade knew what was coming. On October 11, 2019, Cape Coral Police confirmed that Wade Stephen Wilson, 25 years old from Fort Myers, was the person of interest in both Diane Ruiz's and Kristine Melton's deaths. From jail, Wade called Mila and confessed. He admitted over the phone to me that he killed both those women, Mila later said. He said he just felt like it. He said he was on drugs, and it messed him up, he said. Mila was horrified. The men Shed dated was a double murderer, and she realized how close she came to being victim number 3. Wade Wilson has been incarcerated at the Lee County Jail since October 8, 2019. His trial wouldn't come for nearly 5 years. But during that time, Wade transformed himself into something the public had never seen before. When Wade Wilson was first arrested in October 2019, he looked relatively normal. He had some neck tattoos, but his face was clear. He was handsome. Without the tattoos, he looked like any other young man. His ex-girlfriend Kelly Matthews had shared thirst trap photos of Wade from 2018, showing a charismatic, smiling man with nice teeth and dimples. This was the Wade who charmed women, who seemed polite and smart. But something happened during Wade's time in jail awaiting trial. He began transforming himself into a monster. First came the swastika. A large swastika tattoo appeared on the right side of his head in 2019, soon after his arrest. This symbol of hate and extremism added a layer of notoriety to Wade's already severe charges. But Wade didn't stop there. Over the next several years, he continued adding more and more disturbing facial tattoos. By 2024, when his trial finally began, Wade's appearance had changed dramatically. His face was covered in tattoos, a small swastika beneath his right eye, the word glory on his right temple, lines tattooed perpendicular to his lips, with 2 more lines coming out from either side of his mouth, giving his face a skeletal appearance, shading along the entire left side of his face that looked like half a skull, the words "AHA" written from the top of his left eyebrow all the way down around his eye. A stitched-on smile tattoo around his mouth, similar to the Joker's scars in The Dark Knight, the number 14 on the right side of his neck, representing the white supremacist 14 words. The number 88 on the left side of his neck, code for HH or Heil Hitler. Court documents noted possible association with the Unforgiven, a white supremacist prison gang founded in the Florida prison system in 1986. Though one expert from the Anti-Defamation League stated that none of Wilson's visible tattoos definitively indicated membership in that specific gang, the white supremacist imagery was undeniable. As Christopher Magurix from the Anti-Defamation League explained, there is the number 14 on the right side of his neck for the white supremacist mantra known as the 14 words. He also has the number 88 on the left side of his neck, which is the numeric code for the 8th letter of the alphabet, H 2 times equals HH for Heil Hitler. The combination of the numeric codes, 1488, is commonly used by white supremacists of all types. Wade also had tattoos referencing comic book characters. The HA and Stitch smile were clear references to the Joker from Batman. And of course, there was the name connection to Deadpool, Marvel's Wade Wilson. During trial, Wade's defense attorney Kevin Shirley filed a motion to allow Wade to cover some of his tattoos with makeup. The motion was partially successful, but many tattoos remained visible despite attempts to hide them. Shirley told Newsweek, "Mr. Wilson created his appearance while in custody awaiting trial. He has never expressed his reasons. My colleague successfully argued for a procedure to cover up the tattoos. However, when that did not work, I attempted to use that to show his mental instability." Why did Wade transform himself this way? Some theories suggest he was trying to intimidate the jury. Others believe he was embracing a villain persona. His longer hair eventually covered the large swastika on his head, but the smaller one under his eye remained prominently visible. Whatever his reasons, Wade Wilson had transformed from a handsome, charismatic young man into what many described as a real-life comic book villain. The transformation was complete. Wade Wilson's criminal behavior didn't stop just because he was locked up. Even while awaiting trial for double murder, he continued to break the law. On September 30, 2020, deputies at the Lee County Jail received information about a possible escape attempt involving Wade and his cellmate Joseph Katz, who was accused in a domestic violence case. Witnesses at the jail reported hearing pounding noises from an upper-floor cell area for several days. When authorities checked Wade and Katz's roughly 10 by 10-foot cell, they found evidence of tampering. The metal frame, holding the window, had been removed. There were several cracks in the thick security glass. A metal stool that had previously been bolted to the concrete floor had also been removed. Another inmate, Loren Curtis Sawyer, told guards he received a note from Wade asking him to arrange a ride out of here. Detectives determined that Wade Wilson was the mastermind and primary planner of the escape attempt. Katz apparently couldn't have done it without Wade's leadership. Wade was charged with attempted escape and criminal mischief. These charges would eventually be dropped as part of a plea deal, but they showed Wade's continued disregard for rules and authority even while facing potential death penalty. While awaiting trial, Wade Wilson was also charged in a separate case involving the introduction of narcotics into the Lee County Jail. On August 29, 2024, just 2 days after receiving the death penalty for the murders of Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz, Wade Wilson pleaded no contest to drug-related charges. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison to run concurrently with his death sentences. As part of the plea agreement, the charges related to an alleged escape attempt were dropped. This resolution allowed the remaining cases against Wilson to be closed without additional trials and cleared the way for his immediate transfer to death row. Jury selection began on Monday, June 10, 2024, in the Lee County Courthouse in Fort Myers. Around 60 potential jurors were assessed for the case. 12 jurors needed to be selected, with 4 alternates before the trial could begin. The trial had been delayed for years due to multiple factors: the COVID-19 pandemic, changes in Wade's legal representation, the death of his former defense attorney Young Tyndall in November 2019, and Wade's escalating appearance changes. When Wade finally appeared in court for his trial, wearing a formal suit, his extensive facial and neck tattoos were prominently visible despite attempts to cover some with makeup. The contrast was jarring. A man in professional attire, covered in symbols of hate and violence. The prosecution was led by Assistant State Attorneys Andreas Gardner and Sarah Miller. Wade's defense team consisted of attorneys Lee Hollander and Kevin Shirley. In his opening statement, prosecutor Andreas Gardner laid out the state's theory. This case was about killing for the sake of killing. The prosecution called witness after witness to build their case. Stephanie Sailors, Kristine's best friend and roommate, testified about the night at Buddha Live. She described how Kristine seemed happy and safe when Stephanie left her at Kristine's home. Everything was fine. Kristine would have never let me leave the house if she was scared. Jason Shepard, the man Wade befriended at the bar, testified about the group going to his home. He later found Wade's phone at his house and handed it over to law enforcement. Joshua Lukic, owner of Mateos Graphics, testified about Wade showing up at his shop on October 7th in Kristine's stolen car, bloody, missing teeth, asking for money to leave town. Amy Slobodzian, Mila's friend, testified about witnessing Wade attack Mila in the spa parking lot. He said to me, "If I get out of the car, he was going to kill me." Melissa Mila Montanez took the stand and recounted the violence. "There's nobody behind the eyes anymore. There's no reasoning with him." It was when Mila testified that Wade showed the only shift in his otherwise emotionless demeanor during trial. Dr. Noelia Aylmar Hernandez, associate medical examiner, testified about Kristine's cause of death, asphyxia due to compression of the neck. She detailed the extensive injuries. Stephen Testaseca, Wade's biological father, provided the most damning testimony. He recounted the phone calls where Wade confessed. He said him a killer. Testaseca described how Wade told him about running over Diane until she looked like spaghetti. DNA analysts and forensic technicians presented overwhelming evidence. Wade's DNA in Kristine's home and car, surveillance footage, phone records placing Wade at the scenes, and physical evidence connecting him to both murders. Throughout the trial, surveillance footage was shown. Wade walking into Joshua Lukic's shop with Kristine's car. A neighbor's surveillance video showing the black Nissan in Diane's neighborhood the morning she vanished. The evidence was overwhelming. Eyewitnesses, phone records, DNA, confessions, and Wade's own lack of remorse. Prosecutor Sarah Miller told the jury he didn't stop there. He was looking for more prey. He was the lion, and she was his prey. The defendant testified to police that he saw her in fear. He killed 2 innocent victims, one trying to go out and have a good time, and the other trying to get to work. Miller also noted that 3 days after the murders, Wade was still bragging to law enforcement. His biggest concern was getting a burger and fries while Diane lay in a field, bugs eating her face, making her unrecognizable. The defense elected not to present any opening arguments at the start of trial. This is unusual, but strategic. They were saving their energy for closing arguments. Defense attorney Lee Hollander made it clear from the start. There's solid evidence he is responsible for the 2 deaths and the battery of Melissa Montanez. I'm not arguing insanity. I'm arguing the state is claiming premeditation. I'm arguing he's whacked out of his mind for any of this. The defense didn't call any witnesses during the guilt phase of the trial. Wade himself declined to testify. After consulting with his attorneys for about 15 minutes, Wade told the judge, "No, I'm good." In his closing argument, Hollander tried to convince the jury to convict Wade of second-degree murder instead of first-degree. If successful, this would take the death penalty off the table. "I'm arguing he's whacked out of his mind for any of this," Hollander repeated. He wasn't denying Wade did it. He was arguing Wade couldn't have planned it because he was too impaired by drugs and mental illness. But prosecutor Sarah Miller countered that lesser charges didn't need to be considered because the state had proved premeditation beyond a reasonable doubt. "Defendant is guilty as charged. We ask you convict him of all crimes the state alleged," Miller said. After roughly 2 hours of deliberations on June 12, 2024, the jury returned. As the clerk read the verdict, the victims' families reacted with visible emotion. "Yes, yes," they said after every count of guilty. Wade Wilson, on the other hand, showed no emotion. Stone-faced. The jury found Wade Wilson guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. They also found him guilty of grand theft of a motor vehicle, battery, burglary of a dwelling, and first-degree petty theft. Guilty on all counts presented to the jury. The prosecution had proved their case beyond any reasonable doubt. Now came the penalty phase. Would Wade Wilson live or die? The penalty phase began on June 24, 2024. This was the jury's chance to hear additional evidence and decide whether Wade deserved execution or life in prison without parole. The state called 3 witnesses to present victim impact evidence. Zane Romero, Diane's son, testified about his mother's excitement to watch his marching band debut. "I never got to see her in the crowd. My mom will never get to see me get married." Samantha Catomer, Kristine's cousin, testified through tears about Kristine being her child's godmother. Kristine will never experience motherhood, a role she was born to play. She described how Kristine loved to travel, wanted to get to know the world, and lived close to her mother to protect her from scammers. She told the jury that Kristine's cat stayed by her crumbled body until police arrived. Lisa Lansky, Cape Coral Police forensic specialist, identified records showing Wade was on felony probation when he killed both women. The prosecution argued for 4 aggravating factors. 1, Wade was previously convicted of a felony and was on probation during the murders too. He committed 2 murders at once, contemporaneous conviction. 3. The offenses were heinous, atrocious, and cruel. 4. At least 1 offense, Diane's murder, was cold, calculated, and premeditated. Prosecutor Andreas Gardner painted a picture of a man who selected his victims, secluded them, and strangled them. He was under the influence of power, of control, of dominance. He showed utter disregard for women and for life. The jury would need to find that aggravating factors outweighed any mitigating circumstances to recommend death. The defense brought in mental health experts to argue Wade's life should be spared. Dr. Hyman Eisenstein, a forensic neuropsychologist, testified that Wade suffered from neurocognitive brain impairment likely caused by adolescent sports injuries and vehicle wrecks in his early adulthood. Eisenstein said Wade had been diagnosed with depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, and other mental illnesses. He explained that Wade has a neurocognitive impairment. There's enough data to support that his brain is not functioning like a normal, healthy individual. However, on cross-examination, Assistant State Attorney Sarah Miller pointed out that Eisenstein never listened to Wade's statement to police 3 days after the murders, which would have helped gauge Wade's cognitive function at the time. Dr. Mark Mills, a forensic psychiatrist, testified that Wade suffers from a psychotic disorder and is chronically and severely mentally ill. However, Mills acknowledged symptom exaggeration on some test results, suggesting Wade might have been manipulating the tests. The defense highlighted Wade's troubled childhood, his adoption, his head injuries, his drug addiction, and his mental health struggles. Defense attorney Kevin Shirley read a heartbreaking letter from Wade's adoptive parents, Candy and Steve Wilson. "Despite everything, Wade is still our son, and we love him. The hopes and dreams of his life are already lost, but the human is still in there somewhere, tortured beyond what most of us can even imagine." They described Wade as a joyful child who loved his parents and sisters, but they explained how he began to slip away during his teen years, becoming withdrawn, erratic, and depressed. Then his addiction was added to mental illness, and he became, frankly, paranoid and delusional. The parents blamed the system for failing Wade. They put a tiny Band-Aid on it, and then sent him back into the world without a diagnosis, medication, and without follow-up care. They pleaded with the judge. Wade asked the court to take into consideration that death is permanent. Taking another life only adds to the tragedy and will not bring back those 2 beautiful women. Please see it in your heart not to kill our son. Shirley argued that Wilson's mental state wasn't an excuse but an explanation. He urged the jury to consider mitigating circumstances. He reminded them that Wade would die in prison no matter what they decided. The prosecution wasn't convinced. They called their own expert. Dr. Michael Herkoff, a psychologist, testified that he didn't believe there was enough evidence to support a diagnosis of a psychotic disorder. Herkoff opined that Wade's thoroughly documented and self-reported drug abuse was a more likely explanation for his delusions and repeated criminal conduct. The prosecution argued that none of the mitigating evidence outweighed the aggravating factors. The crimes were too heinous, too cruel, too calculated. Assistant State Attorney Andreas Gardner concluded, Mr. Wilson's decisions were not only pitiless and conscienceless, but they amounted to tragically reducing Ms. Melton, as well as Ms. Ruiz, to nothing more than memories and photographs. On June 25, 2024, after about 90 minutes of deliberation, the jury returned with their recommendation. For the murder of Kristine Melton, 9 jurors voted for death, 3 for life. For the murder of Diane Ruiz, 10 jurors voted for death, 2 for life. Under Florida's 2023 law change, only 8 out of 12 jurors need to recommend the death penalty for it to be considered by the judge. Florida is one of only 2 states, along with Alabama, where jury unanimity isn't required for death recommendations. The jury found the state proved these aggravators beyond a reasonable doubt. Wade was on felony probation during both murders. He committed 2 murders at once, contemporaneous conviction. Both offenses were heinous, atrocious, and cruel. Diane's murder was cold, calculated, and premeditated. As the recommendation was read, silent tears flowed down the faces of the victims' families. Wade Wilson remained emotionless, stone cold. The jury's recommendation was clear, but the final decision rested with one man, Judge Nicholas Thompson. Wade's sentencing was originally scheduled for July 23, 2024, but was postponed. The defense requested more time for additional medical testing. Dr. Mark Rubino, a neurologist, had found evidence possibly indicating traumatic brain injury and requested an MRI. The Lee County Sheriff's Office transported Wade to the tests at an undisclosed location for safety reasons. On August 27, 2024, at 9 a.m., a Spencer hearing was held. This is a legal proceeding in Florida that allows the defense to present additional evidence before sentencing. A motion was denied for Wade to appear in street clothes. He appeared in an orange jumpsuit with shackles on his ankles. Dr. Mark Rubino took the stand for his 78th time testifying in a case. Rubino had evaluated Wade while Wade was bound and shackled. He used a Montreal cognitive assessment to measure memory, attention, language, delayed recall, and association. During the test, Wade became frustrated, saying, "I can't do this." Rubino believed Wade felt anxious due to police presence. The rest of the test was completed without law enforcement present. Rubino testified that Wade told him he was pretty normal until age 11, when he told his parents, "I thought I was going crazy." Wade reported head injuries from a car crash where he lost consciousness. He reported 4 concussions total during his childhood and adolescence. The recent MRI and testing showed, according to Rubino, 1, atrophy in Wade's brain, 2, evidence of brain injury, 3, impairment with short-term memory, 4, cognitive and emotional problems in the setting of psychiatric disease. Rubino concluded, as a result of his head injuries, Wilson sustained something, in addition to psychiatric disease, so his behavior is explained by his head injuries, his impulsiveness, his overwhelming emotion that gets acted upon without any kind of checks and balances by the frontal lobe. Rubino said this atrophy can make someone more likely to get angry and not be able to calm down, causing impulsiveness and less likelihood to act with consequence or planning. There's a higher likelihood to be agitated and irritated. However, the prosecution challenged these findings. Dr. Thomas Coyne, a neuropathologist with over 4,000 autopsies performed, took the stand for the state. Coyne testified he saw no evidence of atrophy on Wade's brain. He disagreed with Rubino's physical assessment. "I saw no evidence that there was any underlying structural abnormality to the brain that was consistent with brain trauma," Coyne stated. He found no patterns of chronic traumatic brain injury in Wade's brain scans. The defense also reminded the court of the letter from Wade's parents and highlighted Wade's cooperation with law enforcement, his need for mental health treatment, pleas for mercy from supporters around the world, including an online petition with over 23,000 signatures. But prosecutor Andreas Gardner argued the judge should focus on the aggravating factors. The jury already found that the crimes were heinous, atrocious, and cruel, as well as cold, calculated, and premeditated. None of the defense's mitigating evidence outweighed those factors, Gardner argued. At 2 p.m. on August 27, 2024, Judge Nicholas R. Thompson delivered his ruling. Wade Wilson sat stone-faced, leaning over to consult with his attorney as the judge spoke. Judge Thompson explained his reasoning. In reaching the decision, the court is mindful that because death is a unique punishment in its finality, its application is reserved only for those cases where the most aggravating and least mitigating circumstances exist. The evidence shows the murders were heinous, atrocious, and cruel, and that the second murder was cold, calculated, and premeditated. Having reviewed all of the aggravating factors proven without a reasonable doubt and all of the mitigating circumstances reasonably established by the evidence, the court finds that the aggravating factors greatly outweigh the mitigating circumstances. Given the facts of the case, nothing in the defendant's background or mental state would suggest a death sentence is inappropriate. This court's review of other reported capital cases has led the court to conclude that the death penalty is not disproportionate in this case. Under the totality of the circumstances and evidence, the court finds no basis to override the jury's verdict. The totality of the circumstances warrants that the defendant, Wade Stephen Wilson, be sentenced to death for each count of first-degree murder. 2 death sentences. One for Kristine Melton. One for Diane Ruiz. As the sentence was read, reactions were heard from the gallery. The victims' families felt justice had been served. Wade Wilson showed no reaction. He declined to address the court. Judge Thompson officially sentenced Wade to death row. Wade Wilson, age 30, became one of the first high-profile defendants sentenced to death in Florida under the state's new 8-4 jury recommendation law, which eliminated the requirement for a unanimous verdict in capital sentencing. At a press conference immediately following the sentencing, State Attorney Amira Fox said, "We saw justice served. These were 2 beautiful and wonderful women with their whole lives ahead of them. They were cherished and loved by family, friends, and their community." But she also made a striking statement. "I've been doing this 34 years, and I have to say I have never seen someone as evil as Wade Wilson, and I have never been so stunned to see some people in the community that actually think it's a good idea to support somebody so evil and monstrous." Kristine Melton's cousin, Samantha, addressed the obsession surrounding Wade. "Wade supporters have not been quiet, but we all know that the loudest ones are always the dumb ones anyway. Let you know that this is not the end. It is when Wade Wilson takes his last breath. And I will be there at the execution. That's a promise." Cape Coral Police Chief Anthony Sizemore released a message. "I am grateful for the jury, for their dedication, attentiveness, and ultimately their verdict in the trial. I'm grateful for Judge Thompson, who imposed the proper penalty in this case." On August 29, 2024, just 2 days after receiving the death penalty, Wade pleaded no contest to the drug trafficking charges and received an additional 12 years to run concurrently with his death sentences. The escape attempt charges were dropped as part of the deal. This cleared the way for Wade to be transferred to death row immediately. Shortly after sentencing, Wade Wilson was transferred from the Lee County Jail into the Florida prison system, where he would await his execution. He's currently housed at Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida on death row. Wade's defense team filed a notice of appeal to the Florida Supreme Court. No date has been set for his execution. Given the lengthy appeals process in capital cases, Wade could spend years or even decades on death row before any execution takes place. But for the families of Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz, at least they have the knowledge that Wade Wilson will never walk free again. Something disturbing happened during Wade Wilson's trial. Something that shocked prosecutors, victims' families, and the general public. Wade Wilson became a viral sensation. Videos of Wade in court, with his facial tattoos and smug demeanor, began circulating on TikTok. Instead of revulsion, many viewers expressed attraction. Thirst trap videos appeared, showing Wade's face in slow motion with dreamy music. Edits with filters. Fan fiction. Comments like "I'm in love with a criminal." Thousands of women were posting about Wade Wilson, not condemning him, admiring him. One TikTok from Court TV showing Wade's trial received millions of views. Comment sections were filled with people romanticizing a double murderer. Some book talk users even started writing fan fiction about Wade, treating him like a dark romance character rather than a real killer who destroyed real lives. The phenomenon became so pronounced that it sparked backlash. Other TikTok users created videos condemning the romanticization. That is not who BookTok is. better. But the obsession continued. During Wade's sentencing process, Judge Thompson received numerous letters from people around the world pleading for Wade's life to be spared. 3 women sent letters specifically asking the judge to show mercy. Lindsay Brand, a mother of 2 boys from Alberta, Canada, wrote, "With regards to the Wade Wilson case, it appears clearly documented that Mr. Wilson suffers with mental health issues that appear to be severely aggravated by the use of drugs." Other letters cited Wade's history of mental health issues, substance abuse, and alleged lack of parental support as reasons to spare his life. But the most shocking aspect was the financial support. A fundraiser was created on GoFundMe to save Wade Steven Wilson and help us prove his innocence and fight for a new, fair trial. The campaign raised nearly $74,000 toward its $100,000 goal before GoFundMe removed it for violating terms of service. One donor, identified only as Jeanette, contributed $24,000. An anonymous donor gave $10,000. The fundraiser was moved to a similar website called Fundly, where it raised even more money. But there was a problem. It was a scam. It came out that Wade Wilson and one of his supporters, Jesse Tahanika, were scamming people through these fundraisers. They led donors to believe that Wade would be exonerated if the goal was reached. Both Wade and Jesse are likely to face federal prosecution for fraud. Despite this revelation, the support continued. Wade's defense attorney Kevin Shirley told Newsweek, "I've never been involved in anything like this before. I don't know how many tens of thousands of people are communicating with him or communicating with each other about him. There's donations that are set up for him. I think it's ridiculous, but there's a lot of people that think otherwise." Wade's jail inbox was flooded with messages. Some sources report he received 3,900 messages from women and fans, people sending him love letters, pictures, and marriage proposals. Psychologists have a term for this phenomenon: hybristophilia. Dr. Rachel Tolles, a clinical psychologist and criminal expert, explained, "There's definitely an element of what we call hybristophilia. It's a psychological term for individuals who develop romantic or sexual feelings for criminals." Marriage and family therapist Annalise Lucero saw pro-Wade Wilson TikToks flooding her For You page. She created a response video. "This is like the ultimate I can fix him. The ultimate, but daddy, I love him." So what causes this attraction to killers? Experts point to several factors: confidence and charisma. Many dangerous men, including Wade, exhibit high levels of confidence and charisma. These traits can be incredibly attractive, as confidence is often perceived as a sign of strength and capability. The "I can fix him" mentality. Some women believe they can see the good in criminals that others can't. They believe their love can change them. They see themselves as special, as the one person who truly understands. Media romanticization. TikTok played a key role in fueling the hype around Wade. By creating and sharing content about him with dreamy music and filters, many women constructed a false sense of closeness to Wilson. They formed a community around supporting him. Physical appearance. Despite his disturbing tattoos, Wade possesses what can objectively be considered handsome features underneath. His earlier photos show an attractive man with dimples and a charming smile. Rebellion and danger. There's an allure to danger and rebellion. Dating a killer makes someone feel edgy, different, special. Childhood trauma. Hybristophilia is often linked to childhood or relationship trauma, as well as a distorted perception of the person or situation. Wade Wilson is far from the first killer to attract female admirers. Ted Bundy received hundreds of fan letters while in prison. Women attended his trial to watch him. Carol and Boone married Bundy while he was on trial and had his child. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, received love letters and had admirers send him suggestive photos. One woman, Doreen Leoie, married him while he was on death row. Jeffrey Dahmer received plates of cookies and letters saying "I love you." One fan sent him $12,000. Charles Manson had women tattooing XS on their foreheads to show devotion to him. Eric and Lyle Menendez both received marriage proposals and married women while in prison for murdering their parents. Chris Watts, who murdered his pregnant wife and 2 daughters, received fan mail and marriage proposals in prison. Nicholas Cruz, the Parkland school shooter, received love letters and sexually explicit photos from female admirers while awaiting trial. Wade Wilson fits into this disturbing pattern. But what makes his case unique is the social media amplification. TikTok gave his supporters a platform and community that previous killer admirers never had. The families of Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz were horrified by the obsession with Wade. Kristine's brother, Robert Melton, told Newsweek, "I saw someone online say I hope he doesn't make any money off of this, and I just hope that's not even possible." At the press conference after sentencing, Samantha Cadomer, Kristine's cousin, directly addressed Wade's supporters. Wade supporters have not been quiet, but we all know that the loudest ones are always the dumb ones anyway. State Attorney Amira Fox was equally blunt. "I have never been so stunned to see some people in the community that actually think it's a good idea to support somebody so evil and monstrous." The victims' families want people to remember Kristine and Diane, not Wade. They want the focus on two innocent women whose lives were brutally stolen, not on the man who took them. Kristine's mother, who has dementia, doesn't fully understand what happened. Robert Melton explained, "She thinks Kristine is alive, well and married. Occasionally she'll have moments of reconnecting with reality, and she'll have some memory of the event and she'll re-experience it, which is pretty horrific. That happens on a semi-regular basis, so she gets to re-experience losing her daughter once every couple of months. That's rough." Diane's son Zane Romero and Brandon Cuellar appeared on Bunny XO's podcast to speak about their mother. When asked if they had a message for Wade, Cuellar laughed and said, "I think what's going to affect him more is that you're calling him a loser and not even saying anything because his ego is so f-king fragile, dude." The families refuse to give Wade the attention he craves. They focus instead on keeping Kristine's and Diane's memories alive. What made Wade Wilson kill? Experts who examined Wade came to different conclusions about his mental state. The defense's perspective, Dr. Hyman Eisenstein argued Wade suffered from neurocognitive brain impairment caused by multiple concussions during childhood and adolescent car accidents where he lost consciousness, possible sports-related injuries. Dr. Mark Mills testified Wade has been diagnosed with depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, a chronic and severe psychotic disorder. Dr. Mark Rubino's brain scan showed atrophy in Wade's brain, evidence of possible traumatic brain injury, impairment with short-term memory, cognitive and emotional dysfunction. The defense argued these conditions made Wade prone to impulsive behavior without regard for consequences. His frontal lobe, responsible for planning and impulse control, wasn't functioning properly. The prosecution's perspective, Dr. Michael Herkoff testified that Wade's thoroughly documented and self-reported drug abuse was a more likely explanation for his behavior than a psychotic disorder. Dr. Thomas Coyne found no evidence of structural brain abnormalities or chronic traumatic brain injury in Wade's scans. The prosecution argued that Wade's drug addiction, not mental illness or brain injury, was the primary factor. They noted Wade acknowledged symptom exaggeration on some tests, suggesting manipulation. The reality, a perfect storm. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. Wade Wilson appears to be a case of multiple risk factors combining into a perfect storm. 1. Possible genetic predisposition. We don't know much about his biological parents' mental health history, but teenage pregnancy and inability to parent might indicate instability. 2. Early trauma. Being given up for adoption at 3 months old, even to a loving family, creates attachment issues for some children. 3. Head injuries. Multiple concussions during crucial developmental years can impact brain function and emotional regulation. 4. Mental illness. Whether diagnosed accurately or not, Wade clearly struggled with depression, anxiety, and erratic behavior from age 11 onward. 5. Substance abuse. Heavy drug use, particularly cocaine and methamphetamine, can cause psychotic symptoms and violent behavior. 6. Antisocial personality traits. Wade showed classic signs: lack of empathy, superficial charm, manipulation, repeated criminal behavior, and inability to learn from consequences. 7. Lack of effective intervention. Despite his parents' efforts, Wade never received adequate mental health treatment or addiction services. But none of these factors excuses what Wade did. Many people have brain injuries, mental illness, addiction, and difficult childhoods. They don't become murderers. Wade Wilson displays characteristics common to many serial killers and violent criminals: superficial charm. Multiple ex-girlfriends described Wade as charismatic, polite, and charming in the beginning. He could make people trust him quickly. Grandiosity. Wade's transformation with facial tattoos, his creation of a villain persona, his manipulation of supporters, all point to narcissistic grandiosity. Need for stimulation. Wade's repeated criminal behavior, drug use, and risk-taking suggest a constant need for excitement and stimulation. Pathological lying. Described as a good storyteller, Wade lied constantly and manipulated people effortlessly. Lack of remorse. When asked if Wade showed remorse, his own father said no. Wade told police, "I would do it again." Shallow effect. Wade's emotionless demeanor during trial, even when convicted and sentenced to death, shows severely blunted emotional responses. Callousness. Describing Diane as looking like spaghetti after he ran her over shows extreme callousness and possible sadistic enjoyment. Parasitic lifestyle. Wade frequently asked his biological father for money and manipulated people for resources. Poor behavioral controls. Repeated arrests, violent outbursts, and inability to control impulses despite consequences. Sexual promiscuity and deviance. Multiple relationships, alleged sexual assaults, and violent sexual behavior with ex-girlfriends. Early behavioral problems, school suspensions, escalating aggression, and early drug use. Criminal versatility, burglary, assault, fraud, trespassing, theft, drug trafficking, escape attempts, murder. Wade committed almost every type of crime. This profile matches closely with psychopathy. While Wade may have mental health issues and brain abnormalities, there's also evidence of a fundamentally antisocial personality structure. Why strangling? Strangulation is an intimate method of killing. It requires close physical contact with the victim, several minutes of sustained pressure, feeling the victim's struggle, and eventual stillness, looking at the victim's face as they die. It's not impulsive like shooting. It's not distant. It's personal. Prosecutor Sarah Miller noted during trial, strangulation is the epitome of life slipping through someone's hands. Wade strangled both Kristine and Diane. This choice of method reveals something about his psychology. Power and control. Strangulation gives the killer complete control over when the victim lives or dies. They can release pressure, let the victim breathe, then squeeze again. It's the ultimate power trip. Intimacy of violence. Wade wanted to be close to his victims. He wanted to feel their fear. As prosecutors said, he could sense, he liked knowing that they were in fear. Sexual component. Some sources mention Wade allegedly showed patterns of sexual violence. Strangulation often has a sexual component for certain killers. Silence. Strangling prevents screaming, which may have been practical for Wade's purposes. The fact that Wade used the same method for both victims suggests this wasn't random. This was his preferred way to kill. When Wade's father asked him why he killed those women, Wade couldn't provide a coherent motive beyond, "I just wanted to do it." This statement is chilling in its simplicity. No elaborate justification. No claims of voices in his head. No blaming the victims. Just pure, simple desire to kill. This suggests Wade killed for the experience itself. For the thrill. For the power. Because he could. Prosecutor Andreas Gardner argued, this case was about killing for the sake of killing. Wade selected his victims not for who they were, but because they were available. Kristine happened to be at the bar. Diane happened to be walking to work. They were prey, and Wade was hunting. Wade's calm demeanor after the murders supports this. He asked for a burger and fries. He bragged to police. He showed no remorse. He said he'd do it again. This wasn't a crime of passion nor psychotic break. This was predatory violence by someone who enjoyed it. Wade Wilson shares his name with the Marvel Comics character Deadpool. This coincidence became a major part of his media coverage. Wade Deadpool Wilson is a fictional anti-hero portrayed by Ryan Reynolds in popular films. The character is a mercenary with a dark sense of humor, scarred face, and violent tendencies, but ultimately fights for good. The real Wade Wilson is nothing like this fictional hero, but the media latched onto the name coincidence, dubbing him the Deadpool Killer. Some of Wade's tattoos even reference the character and other comic book films. The Joker-inspired HA and Stitch smile. Possible references to The Dark Knight. Wade seemed to be leaning into the comparison, creating his own villain persona. The nickname gave Wade instant recognition. People who might never have heard about the case knew about the Deadpool Killer. It made him memorable in a way that helped fuel his viral fame. But for the victims' families, the nickname was insulting. It turned their tragedy into a pop culture reference. It made Wade sound cool or interesting rather than evil. As of January 2026, this case has already been turned into a major streaming release. Handsome Devil, Charming Killer premiered on Paramount Plus on January 20th, 2026 as a 3-part docuseries. It dropped at a time when the online obsession around Wade Wilson was already actively spreading. In the first days after release, it quickly climbed into Paramount Plus top 10 lists in the US, showing just how much attention this story still pulls. According to the press release, Wilson's mugshot ignited an online frenzy among people drawn to his bad boy bravado, surprising tattoos, and seductive smile. The documentary explores how social media, particularly TikTok, amplified Wade's notoriety and created a cult of personality around a convicted murderer. It includes interviews with people involved in the case, examines the psychological factors behind hybristophilia, and questions what Wade's popularity says about modern society. The documentary is marketed as examining the intersection of true crime, social media, and dangerous attraction. For better or worse, Wade Wilson's case has become a cultural phenomenon. The documentary will likely introduce even more people to his story. The question is, will it glorify Wade or appropriately condemn him? Will it fuel the obsession or help people understand how dangerous it is? Only time will tell. Wade Wilson's case raises important questions about media coverage of criminals. Does extensive coverage create celebrity? By constantly showing Wade's face, describing his appearance, and discussing his case, do media outlets make him famous? Do dramatic nicknames glamorize killers? Does Deadpool killer make Wade sound more interesting than convicted double murderer Wade Wilson? Should killers' images be shown? Some countries don't publish photos or names of criminals to avoid glorifying them. Should America adopt similar policies? How do we cover true crime responsibly? Can we tell important stories about criminal justice without making killers into antiheroes? These are difficult questions with no easy answers. What's clear is that Wade Wilson became famous partly because of how his case was covered. The tattoos, the name, the courtroom footage, all of it created a perfect storm for viral fame. The victims' families just want people to remember Kristine and Diane. But instead, Wade's face is everywhere. The Wade Wilson case is more than just another murder story. It's a window into something deeply troubling about modern society. We glamorize criminals. Despite knowing Wade strangled 2 women and ran one over until she looked like spaghetti, thousands of people defended him, sent him money, and declared their love for him. Physical appearance distorts judgment. Wade's good looks and tattoos made people overlook the horror of his crimes. If he looked different, would he have the same fan base? Probably not. Social media amplifies everything. TikTok turned Wade into a viral sensation. Without social media, he would be just another killer. Now he's famous. We're drawn to danger. The same impulses that make us love true crime podcasts and serial killer documentaries can mutate into actual attraction to real killers. The victims get forgotten. How many people know Kristine Melton's name? Diane Ruiz's name? Compared to how many know the Deadpool killer? Wade Wilson is evil. That's not hyperbole or exaggeration. He killed 2 innocent women for fun. He showed no remorse. He said he'd do it again. But thousands of people looked at him and saw someone worth defending. Let's end where we should focus, on the victims. Kristine Marie Melton was 35 years old when she died. She was a cat lover. She was adventurous and wanted to see the world. She was quick-witted and made everyone feel safe. She was a loyal friend to Stephanie Sailors. She was a devoted daughter who had coffee with her mother every morning. She was the godmother to her cousin's child, a role she considered her greatest honor. She was supposed to become a mother herself one day. She went out for a fun night listening to live music. She met someone who seemed nice. She brought him to her home. She went to sleep in her own bed. She should have been safe. Diane Marie Ruiz was 43 years old when she died. She was a mother to 2 sons who loved her dearly. She was engaged to be married to Scott Hannon. She was a server and bartender at the Moose Lodge, where customers and co-workers adored her. She didn't have a bad bone in her body. She was walking to work, ready to start another day. She should have been safe. Both women had families who loved them, friends who missed them, lives that mattered, dreams that will never be fulfilled. Kristine's mother re-experiences losing her daughter every few months when her dementia lifts enough to remember. That grief is fresh and raw every single time. Diane's son Zane never got to see his mother in the crowd watching his marching band performance. He'll never have her at his wedding. Brandon lost his mother and has to live with that absence every day. The families don't want Wade Wilson to be famous. They want justice. They want peace. They want people to remember the women who died, not the man who killed them. Wade Wilson sits on death row at Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida. He's appealing his conviction to the Florida Supreme Court. The appeals process can take years or even decades. Most death row inmates spend 15 to 20 years waiting for execution, and many die of natural causes first. Wade is 30 years old now. He could be on death row until he's 50, 60, or older. Florida uses lethal injection for executions. When or if Wade's appeals run out, he'll be strapped to a gurney and given a series of drugs that will stop his heart. His ex-girlfriend, Kelly Matthews, has promised to be in the front row to watch. The victims' families have promised to be there, too. "This is not the end," said Kristine's cousin Samantha. "It is when Wade Wilson takes his last breath. Until then, Wade waits." And the families of Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz continue living with the absence of the women they loved. If there's one thing to take away from the Wade Wilson case, it's this: evil often looks ordinary. Sometimes it even looks attractive. Wade Wilson wasn't a monster in appearance until he made himself one with tattoos. Before that, he looked like any other young man. He was charming, charismatic, capable of making people trust him. That's what makes people like Wade so dangerous. They don't look evil. They don't announce themselves. They blend in. They smile. They charm you. And by the time you realize what they are, it might be too late. Kristine Melton thought Wade was safe enough to bring her home. Diane Ruiz thought he was safe enough to help with directions. Both paid for that trust with their lives. Be careful who you trust. Pay attention to red flags. Listen to your instincts. And remember that the people who commit the worst crimes often don't look like monsters. They look like Wade Wilson, handsome, charming, and utterly, completely evil. Rest in peace, Kristine Marie Melton and Diane Marie Ruiz. May their memories be a blessing. May their families find peace. And may justice, finally served, bring some measure of closure to those who loved them. This has been The Guilty Guilt, where every case reminds us that truth is rarely simple and justice is never easy. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, and share. Until next time.